Ho Chi Minh City is ready for new flows of FDI. Finance firms crown the list of 2020 Forbes Vietnam's 50 best listed companies. Agriculture Ministry gears up for possible attack of locusts. 30-day visa exemption for foreigners entering Phu Quoc Island. Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City among most popular travel destinations in Asia. Vietnam to suffer more heat waves in June. Hello, this is Trinh Lê with FBNC News, and I have just run through the headlines for today's program. Now, foreign direct investment into Ho Chi Minh City increased by nearly $70 million in the first 4 months of this year, despite COVID-19 negative impact. Not stopping there, the city is now putting all resources in building policies and getting ready to welcome new flows of FDI. This is considered one of the important strategies for the city's economic recovery after the pandemic.
In the first 4 months of the year, despite the impact of coronavirus disease, foreign direct investment in Ho Chi Minh City still increased 2.6 times compared to the same period last year, with a value of nearly $66 million. Notably, the operations of most FDI enterprises in the cities remain effective and stable.
We are able to get support from the central and local authorities, offering one kind of a one-stop shop kind of application, and of course tax incentive given to.
Before the wave of global investment post-COVID-19, Ho Chi Minh City's high-tech park continued to be an ideal destination for foreign investors. However, due to running out of land, the Ho Chi Minh City's high-tech park will focus on attracting FDIs in areas such as high-tech and value-added services, which can help linking businesses to a global supply chain.
Khu công nghệ cao thì sẽ tập trung vào phân khúc cao hơn của chuỗi giá trị, tức là tập trung vào phát triển năng lực nội sinh. Để hỗ trợ cho cái đấy thì khu công nghệ cao phải thu hút những cái dự án FDI mà tập trung vào hoạt động R&D và đổi mới sáng tạo, chứ không phải là những dự án FDI về sản xuất công nghệ cao.
According to experts, Ho Chi Minh City has a lot of opportunities to attract foreign investors. But in order to develop high-quality projects and attract good source of FDI, it is necessary to have a solid roadmap and strategic orientations, with policies that can help support the development of domestic enterprises, as well bringing good profits to investors.
Vấn đề bây giờ là có một cái cách tầm nhìn toàn khu vực, toàn cầu để chúng ta thu hút được những cái ngành mà chúng ta ưu tiên, như là công nghiệp hỗ trợ hay là những ngành công nghệ cao hay là những ngành mà chúng ta đặt ra cái ưu tiên trong trung và dài hạn.
Dự án phải có tính lan tỏa, tính tác động lớn, dự án lớn, có hiệu quả đối với nền kinh tế, bảo vệ môi trường, sử dụng ít năng lượng, công nghệ tiên tiến và có mối liên hệ và làm cho các doanh nghiệp Việt Nam có thể kết nối và phát triển thành chuỗi ở ngay trong nước mình. Đấy cũng là cái mà các nhà đầu tư nước ngoài cũng mong muốn, bởi vì khi có cái chuỗi ở trong nội địa thì họ không bị phụ thuộc ở nhiều cái chuỗi khác ở bên ngoài.
The shift of investments is open up a great opportunities for Ho Chi Minh Cities and Vietnam's economy to recover and develop after the pandemic, but challenges also come hand in hand. Therefore, attracting foreign investment at all costs should not be encouraged without ensuring the efficiencies, long-term and sustainable benefits.
On June 1st, Forbes Vietnam announced its rankings of 50 best listed companies in 2020. The list shows the emergence of sectors less hit by COVID-19, such as pharmaceuticals, assembling, consumer goods, construction materials, and finance.
Forbes Vietnam Group's best performing company listed in the Hanoi Stock Exchange and Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange. Accordingly, total post-tax profit of companies on the list surpassed 138.7 trillion Vietnam dongs, equivalent to $6 billion, up 8.7% from 2019. The leading companies also posted impressive growth. Vietcombank topped the list for 2 years in a row, with profits before tax reached 23 trillion Vietnam dongs, equivalent to $1 billion. In terms of revenues, with nearly 190 trillion Vietnam dongs, Vietnam Oil and Gas Group continued to lead the list for the fourth consecutive years. This year's ranking from Forbes Vietnam also recorded the remarkable growth of the private sector, with leading private firms such as Vingroup, Mason Group, Techcombank, VP Bank, Hòa Phát, and Mobile World. Due to impacts of COVID-19, the market capitalizations of companies on the list decreased year-on-year for the first time in the past 8 years, reaching $81.3 billion as of the mid-May, down 13.5% from 2019.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc on June 3rd signed off the National Digital Transformation Program until 2025, which targets a digital economy contributing 20% of Vietnam's GDP over the next 5 years. The program aims to concurrently develop a digital government, economy and society and create digital technology businesses capable of extending their reach to the world. The digital economy is hoped to account for 20% of the country's GDP by 2025. Vietnam also expects to be among the top 50 countries in the ICT Development Index and the Global Competitiveness Index, and one of the 35 leading countries in the Global Innovation Index. 80% of online public services will be provided via different technological means, including mobile devices. All national databases that create the foundation for e-government development, including those on population, land, business registration, finance, and insurance, will be completed, connected, and shared nationwide. The country is also looking to secure a place among the top 35 in the FDI rankings over the next decade. In the national program, Vietnam also plans to universalize broadband internet and 5G services, have over 80% of its population using e-payment accounts, and become one of the top 30 countries in the Global Cybersecurity Index. Some 70,000 to 80,000 workers across the country have returned to work since the mass disruption caused by the novel coronavirus in Vietnam, said Deputy Minister of Labour, Invalids and Social Affairs Lê Văn Thanh at an online conference recently held to discuss and share experience in job creation and business sustainability in the new normal. During the first 4 months of 2020, it was estimated that over 5 million workers in Vietnam either lost their jobs, had their work hours reduced, or suffered income loss. According to a survey by the Ministry of Labour, Invalids and Social Affairs, 67% of all businesses had to lay off part of their workforce, while up to 80% of businesses in the informal sector had to suspend their operations for up to a month in compliance with social isolation regulations. The survey also showed one of the lowest labor participation rates ever recorded during the first quarter of this year, with just over 75%. In the coming months, more workers will likely return to work, but there are steps that must be taken to ensure a smooth and more efficient process. The government has reserved a budget of up to 5 trillion Vietnam dongs to retrain and reskill workers to help adapt the Vietnamese labor force to new changes in the job market. While the country will likely see more workers returning to work in the near future, the COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented and hard to predict. In a worst-case scenario, up to 100,000 workers could lose their jobs within a month, with up to 80% of businesses forced to lay off 7.2 million staff. The State Bank of Vietnam (SBV) is expected to further take monetary easing measures to support the country's GDP growth target of above 5% this year, in light of a weak economic outlook. The SBV cut its benchmark interest rates by 50 basis points on May 12. Accordingly, the refinancing rate was reduced to 4.5%, the discount rate to 3%, and the overnight interbank lending rate to 5.5% with effect from May 13th. According to Fitch Solutions, a weak growth outlook in 2020 will likely spur further monetary easing. Fitch forecasts Vietnam real GDP growth to decelerate to 2.8% this year from 7% in 2019 due to weak external demand from the world's market. that hampers a recovery in Vietnam's large manufacturing industry. In addition, Fitch set manageable inflation at below the government's 4% target in 2020 will also allow for further monetary easing. Despite Fitch expectations for further monetary easing, it maintained its view that the key problem now is a lack of loan demand and investment appetite amid elevated economic uncertainty brought about by the COVID-19 shock on the world's economy. As such, further interest rate cuts in this juncture will not provide much of a boost to the economy. Made in Vietnam fabrics have been exempted from new import tariffs of Indonesia, which have been imposed on some textile products from May this year until November 2022.
Aside from Vietnam, other countries and territories exempted from the safeguard measures include the Republic of Korea and Hong Kong for the imports of synthetic yarn and curtains, as well as India also for fabrics, according to the Indonesian Finance Ministry. In 2019, the Indonesian government imposed temporary additional duties on imports of textiles and textile products up to 67.7%. The fresh move is a safeguard measure to protect the domestic upstream industry from a recent surge in imports and encourage the use of domestic market products. Previously, Moody's Investor Service warned that the US-China trade tensions could lead to an influx of Chinese yarn, fabrics, and garments into Indonesia. It said potentially disrupting the so far stable levels of demand and supply in Indonesia.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development (MARD) is prompting preparations for the possibility of an invasion by locusts in the time ahead. The MARD said locusts have caused devastation in Pakistan and entered India's northern and western areas in late May. They may continue migrating to Bangladesh, Myanmar, Laos, or Yunnan and Guangxi provinces of China, and then Vietnam. If the locust swarms reach those regions, they will directly threaten agricultural production in Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, stressing the critical importance of keeping a close watch on the formation and migration directions of locusts. Desert locusts are likely to follow southwest and west winds to continue migrating to South Asian countries like Pakistan and India in June and July, and then to Vietnam. A National Steering Committee for Locust Prevention and Control will be set up. At the same time, the agriculture sector will maximize every resource to fight against desert locusts and build plans to protect crops, assets, and livelihoods in the affected areas, according to the MARD. The Food and Agriculture Organization estimated the locust population in East Africa at hundreds of millions, have destroyed crops and other food sources, and seriously threatened aviation security. If left unchecked, the plague will affect 60 countries and jeopardize food security for hundreds of millions of people. According to Deputy Minister of Transport, Vietnam will pay 95% of the value of the contracts for the linh-ha urban railway project when it is completed.
Replying to questions about the Chinese contractors' recent demand for $50 million to be paid before the line's trial run, Deputy Minister of Transport Nguyễn Ngọc Đông says the payments must be made in line with the signed contract, noting that 95% of the contract values will be paid when the project is completed and past checks. The remaining 5% will be kept for maintaining like in order investment projects. The MOT's Railway Management Board, which is the project's investor, is responsible for making the payments, the Deputy Minister noted, adding that it has paid 80% of the contract's values according to the finishes workload and the contract. Meanwhile, the ministry is responsible for directing the Railway Management Board in working with the contractors and mobilizing its resources for the project implementations. Despite 99% of the workload being completed, the project's commercial operations have experienced multiple setbacks and been delayed 8 times since the construction began in 2011. The 19.5-kilometer-long railway line from Cát Linh in Ba Đinh District to Hà Đông District of Hanoi has a total investment capital of approximately $886 million after several adjustments, funded by Chinese ODA.
Vietnam's government has just issued resolution number 80 on visa exemption for foreigners entering Phu Quoc Economic Zone in Kiên Giang province.
According to the resolution issued by the government, foreigners in all countries entering Phu Quoc Economic Zone will have their visas exempted for 30 days. Phu Quoc is a coastal economic zone that meets all four important conditions, having all international airport, definite geographical boundaries separating from the mainland, being consistent with the socio-economic development policy, and not harming Vietnam's defense, national security, social order, and safety. This resolution takes effect from the 1st of July 2020.
Vietnam's two largest cities of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City have been named among the most popular travel destinations throughout Asia by US-based magazine Reader's Digest.
According to the magazine, from picturesque temples and pagodas to vibrant markets, Hanoi is a feast for the senses. Despite modern developments, history remains on display throughout. Through the narrow street of the old quarters, visits the creepily fascinating Hoa Lo prison turned museums. Oko impeccably preserved traditional Vietnamese architectures at the Temple of Literature, the former sites of a Confucian academies, said the article. Ho Chi Minh City, formerly Saigon, is home to Notre Dame's Cathedral and the 19th century Central Post Office. Ben Thanh Market is overflowing with food, handicrafts, and souvenirs. The incense-filled J Emperor Pagoda, War Random Museums, Reunification Parade, and Jack Lum Pagodas are must. Don't leave without touring the fruit orchards, paddy fields, and marshland of the Mekong Delta, and make sure to avoid distressful and vacation mistakes, is wrote. The list have been compiled based on natural splendors, eye-catching architectures, rich culture, and culinary delight. Other cities named in the list include Tokyo and Kyoto, Japan, Bangkok, Thailand, Singapore, Beijing, China, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Seoul, the Republic of Korea, among others.
Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi on June 1st agreed to conduct a discussion with the Vietnamese government on considering the resumption of travel between the two countries. Japan and Vietnam have agreed to strengthen cooperation in recovering their economic growth in the coming time, since this is also an important issue besides containing the spread of the disease. According to Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga, the COVID-19 pandemic is still spreading worldwide, especially in developing and emerging countries. So the Japanese government still needs to maintain vigilance with the entry into the country. However, he also underlined the importance of considering resumption of travel between people of two countries. Suga said his country would keep a close watch on the disease developments in the world and carefully consider the easing of entry with specific groups from each country, as well as related procedures. Japanese media recently informed that its government is likely to include Vietnam in the list of 4 countries that entry restriction can be relaxed in the first phase, together with Thailand, Australia, and New Zealand. More heat waves are forecasted to hit Vietnam in June, mostly in the first 2 weeks. The country's average temperature is predicted to rise 0.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, higher than the same period in previous years, while the total rainfall is to reduce by 20 to 40%, according to the National Center for Hydrometeorological Weather Forecasting.
Extreme heat waves with a dry southwest wind also put central provinces at risk of blazes and forest fires. The Central Highlands and the South are forecasted to experience downpours, especially in the second half of June. Also, from early June, heat waves will hit the Red River Delta and the central region. The northern mountainous area is expected to see showers. In 2020, Vietnam is forecasted to face historic heat waves and abnormal weather events. In May, Prime Minister Nguyễn Xuân Phúc urged central provinces to implement measures in response to the prolonged heat wave, drought, and salt water intrusion. Priority should be given to supplying water for people, animal husbandry, and industrial crop cultivation of perennial trees.
Now that has wrapped up FBNC News for this week. Thanks for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.